Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a very long time. I know I've said before, I hate when, I don't know, people online apologize for being away for so long because I'm pretty sure no one absolutely notices it all. But either way, I feel like I've missed everyone here in this community. AI security has just become so much more important, and my company's really picked up a lot of work, which is wonderful, but also just I feel so swamped. But that's a really good thing. The other thing, I've been doing a lot of travel. So where am I at the moment? I'm actually in Prague, which is so cool. It's my first time in Prague and it's beautiful. I love it. I'm here for B-Sides Prague. I'm speaking tomorrow about my book, Practical AI Security, which is being published with No Starch Press. There are two launch dates technically. So mid-April is when it became available on No Starch Press's website to order. So you can go there now and get a physical copy ordered to you, which is so exciting to me. But I haven't even got a physical copy yet because I've been traveling so much that I missed like all of the delivery options for them to try and send it to me. They did send it to an address of mine in the UK, but I left yesterday morning because I was in Cambridge building their AI security course and I did a little filming for it yesterday. And then on Saturday, I head to Australia because I've got a bunch of client work that needs to be done in person, specifically these live executive trainings. You might be familiar with the AI security fundamentals course that I run. That's predominantly remote unless we do enterprise specific versions that we deliver to them. But yeah, the executive training we do is in person. So anyway, all that's to say, I'm really happy to be back, especially because I wanted to talk about something that has been the top of mind for everyone over the last couple of weeks. And everyone keeps saying, oh, Harry, you should do an episode about Mythos. And I'm like, I really should. So now I'm finally getting down to it. But before I get into that, just one quick favor to ask of every one of you, because it makes such a difference. If you could comment, subscribe. I am almost at 1,000 subscribers, which feels very exciting to me, as I do a lot of stuff. And the main reason of this YouTube channel was to, I guess, make sure that there was freely available information for people in the community who who can't just sign up to a course or get consulting services or whatever, or go through paid services. So this is really important to me. And I mentioned that I helped build Cambridge University's, specifically their executive development program offering on AI security. Do you know how they found me? Through my YouTube, which is insane to me because to me, my YouTube feels really, really hacky. But I guess the thing is, yeah, it's content. They liked it and they wrote for me in that way. So it really helps more than and it makes sure that more AI security content is available everywhere. So anyway, with that out of the way, let me get into the topic of today, and that is Claude Mythos. So what is it and why is everyone talking about it? So at the start of April, Anthropic, big frontier AI company, released Claude Mythos. It's a specific type of model that can basically do cybersecurity penetration testing in the sense that they can run this model across any cyber system or information system and try and identify vulnerabilities in that system. And they did that, and it's very, very capable. Essentially claimed that there are thousands of vulnerabilities that are discovered. Now, this is really concerning. Some of the examples are, for example, 10 to 30-year-old bugs. So apparently there was a 27-year-old OpenBSD vulnerability. So in the tool OpenBSD, which has been operating for decades already, they found a new bug that hadn't been caught before. And there was another one in FMPEG that has also been around for 16 years, and these weren't caught. So in the report, one important thing to nuance is that there are claims that there were thousands of vulnerabilities discovered. These are now going through a process of manual validation. So, for example, there is a verified test, so the Mozilla test, and this is some of the most concrete evidence. So Mozilla, the company, used Mythos on Firefox 150 pre-release, and they found 271 vulnerabilities that were then patched. According to Mozilla's CTO, they says this model is every bit as capable as the world's best security researchers, which is very concerning. But they also said these are vulnerabilities humans could find, just much slower. And I'll come back to that later. Something important to note is that the thousands number is based on around 200 manually reviewed findings, which get around 90% agreement with experts. And so this is then extrapolated to thousands. So they're still going through that process of validating and patching those bugs. And that's when we come to this project called Project Glasswing. And this is essentially this very controlled rollout of Mythos to certain companies. Most of the time, well, all of the time, these are like technology providers who may need to patch something in their system due to something that Mythos has found. There are also research organizations as part of that group. So imagine organizations like Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and JP Morgan. It's around 40 of them. Something interesting I found out was that CISA, so the US Cyber Defense Agency, apparently didn't get access, which I think is quite interesting and goes to show that the release of this model wasn't necessarily to be used. Okay, maybe put a big asterisk there, but the intended purpose of the report at this stage was not to use it for offensive or defensive purposes, but to ensure that the companies that might have vulnerabilities in their products or that were found to likely have these vulnerabilities could patch them first, which I think is something interesting to dive into later. So that's the situation. That's Mythos. That's why everyone is really concerned about it, because even though human security researchers could find these bugs and vulnerabilities, it would take them a lot of time. And Mythos found them, reportedly in a very short period of time. What's different about Mythos to previous models? There has been a lot of work in the AI for security space in looking for vulnerabilities that could be used defensively or offensively. And it's the same kind of technology, right? So people who work on the defensive side, every so often I'm like, well, aren't you concerned that that same technology could also be used for offense? And they're like, well, sure, but if the bugs and vulnerabilities exist, then we need to make sure that we can patch them. And so being able to create tools that let us do that defensive piece is really, really important. And then ensuring that it doesn't get used offensively is the different part of the implementation and control problem. There are, of course, others who think it's a good thing to use it for offensive purposes anyway. There's this big sort of notion of like hack to defend or like active defense, which is how for example, governments around the world, like the US government, legalizes hacking of other nations. So there's it's a pretty challenging problem. But one of the really interesting problems about the technology, to go back to the point of, is this a revolution or an evolution? So yeah, these kinds of models have existed for a long time. I have founder friends who are creating organizations that do this kind of thing. Shout out to Harmony Intelligence. But I think the thing that researchers at least are noticing or citing about Mythos is that it's not just its ability to find vulnerabilities using successive steps, but it's that ability to really automate and include some sort of agency when it comes to chaining multi-step reasoning and paths. So you can imagine that if you're a penetration tester looking for a vulnerability, there is a big set of best practice where you could start looking for entry points. You can start testing well-known issues in technology product. And then if you find one bug, that's not the same as a vulnerability, right? A bug might just be some kind of error or some way of getting in or some way of bypassing whatever was meant to be there. But that doesn't necessarily get you where you want to go. It doesn't necessarily give you access to data or access to the system or the ability to move laterally within that system or escalate your privileges or anything. You have to find multiple bugs in a useful order in the system to actually affect any kind of impact. So this is where we come to something like the Swiss cheese model, which I really like. So you imagine layers of Swiss cheese, each with their holes. Only when all of the holes line up in the right way can an attacker get through. Mythos is just very, very good at testing all of those different possibilities of bugs and then being able to continue reasoning and finding chains of bugs in order to get to a point where it is a real vulnerability, something that could actually cause some kind of impact or effect to the system. So in summary, a lot of researchers are saying that what is different about Mythos when it comes to offensive capability is its ability to chain vulnerabilities to generate working exploits. So again, things that actually create impact, and then to execute the attack sequences autonomously. So even with previous models, a human pen tester using AI tools to help them with that process, there'd be a lot of prompting involved, there'd be hand holding. This is different. A really good resource to understand exactly what is going on at a more scientific level is the UK's AC. So the UK's AI Security Institute. There are lots of ACs around the world. Many countries have ACs. They're often just named AI Safety Institutes. There's a whole thing, the UK changed theirs to be the AI Security Institute. Won't go into why. I think there's a previous episode on that, but it's mostly political, to spill the beans on that one. They did get access to Mythos and they basically evaluate it. So the AC does lots of evaluations of frontier models. They have pretty good collaborations with those companies, but they also just produce a lot of useful research and they do grants and that kind of thing. So I'll link it in the show notes, but they have this blog report called Our Evaluation of Claude Mythos Previews Cyber Capabilities. The headline basically is that they put it through a CTF, so a capture the flag. You're basically meant to get into a system and capture all of these flags. You do that by identifying and exploiting weaknesses. So essentially, they will give different models these CTF challenges as well, and it's a great way of determining how good they are. So they basically tested lots and lots of different models. In the beginner CTF challenge, they tested 17 different models, of which Mythos was one. The others were like different types of GPT models, like GPT 3.5 Turbo, GPT 4 Turbo, and they also tested other Claude models. They tested Codex, they tested the O1 and O3 models, and they basically report on how good they are. Mythos consistently ranks very, very good. Its average success rate is high. Doesn't mean it's always 100%, but a lot of the time it's pretty close. There are other models that are also good. So what's really good about Mythos Preview's success on our cyber range indicates that it is at least capable of autonomously attacking small, weakly defended and vulnerable enterprise systems where access to a network has been gained. However, our ranges have important differences from real-world environments that make them easier targets. They lack security features that are often present, such as active defenders and defensive tooling. There are also no penalties for the model for undertaking actions that would trigger security alerts. This means we cannot say for sure whether Mythos Preview would be able to attack well-defended systems. So I think this is a really useful takeaway because it does sort of ground it in the reality of, as an academic model, it's very, very good. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it would work well in operational environments. So specifically because of the absence of defenses in the cyber range that it had, but also that really important point about how Mythos might do things that a human penetration tester or a human red teamer would know not to do because it might trigger alerts or it might give evidence that it has been there or alert someone to the fact that it is there right now. That said, obviously, those are things that can be kind of tuned over time. So they have a section about what organizations should do now. They say, our testing shows that Mythos Preview can exploit systems with weak security posture, and it is likely that more models with these capabilities will be developed. This is a really important point. It's not just the fact that Mythos exists, it's that many AI companies, if Claude Mythos can do this, it's very likely that the other companies are not far behind. So to say that Claude Mythos exists is not to say that this is the only capability. The key takeaway highlights the importance of cybersecurity basics, such as regular application of security updates, robust access controls, security configuration, and comprehensive logging. I think this is really interesting because this has generated quite a lot of fear. I've mentioned before that most of my network come from the AI safety space, cybersecurity people who generally a bit skeptical about the rising capability of AI and how intelligent it is really. But then the other half of my network are AI safety folk who are very, very concerned about how capable artificial intelligence is becoming. And most of the people I know in that network believe that within 3 years, humanity as we know it is going to end. I'm not even joking. Like, they seriously believe that, maybe it wouldn't end under some kind of apocalyptic scenario, but what does an existential crisis look like for humanity? It could be 20% unemployment. And that looks like it might be not that unreasonable, possibly even in a shorter time frame than 3 years. And so even though Claude Mythos, I don't know, it is again it's a step change in capability here, but it's a step change that's happening faster than a lot of safety researchers assumed it might. A lot of people quite concerned. Last, I watched this great documentary called The AI Doc. I can't remember who produced it. It was quite well made. Tristan Harris, who was in the Social Dilemma documentary, I think he was a producer. He's at least talking about it a lot on podcasts. But it was, I don't know, sometimes I come into these AI documentaries a little skeptical. Not even for any bad reasons, but sometimes, I work in AI all the time. I'm sick of hearing all the analogies. And so I wasn't sure what it would be like, but it was actually quite a well-balanced perspective on, interviewing people who are really concerned about the rise of AI and then interviewing people who are really optimistic about the rise of AI. And a lot of it came down to the fact that, these 5 or so AI labs in the United States are really driving this incredible acceleration in technology, even though it might like severely change how our society functions. That doesn't need to be like super political or anything. It could be just mass unemployment. It could be, AI becoming so capable it becomes deceptive and it takes over the world. But that spectrum really varied of what that concern looked like. And so it kind of came down to, well, who are these CEOs and why aren't they thinking about that more? Like, why aren't they thinking about the societal implications? Why is it just like accelerate AI development at all cost? Big drum roll moment on the documentary, and the CEOs came on to the documentary, at least 3 of them. So it was the CEOs of Anthropic, OpenAI, and I think it was Microsoft. It was really interesting. Like the first thing they did when they brought Sam Altman on was, he talked about his how he's expecting a baby. The director of the documentary was also expecting a baby, and so a lot of the conversation was around like, is this a good world to bring a child into? Sam Altman was like, yeah, I'm so excited for the future. I'm also a bit nervous about AI. And the director was like, well, the US must develop AI before China. And I can't help thinking about Mythos in that frame of reference. These models are becoming increasingly more capable because there's this existential threat due to our geopolitical situation. Likewise, it means that China has that same pressure to develop advanced AI because the United States is. It's just leading to this arms race in developing it first. And why is the United States so concerned that China would necessarily, dominate or win? Like, what does that look like when it comes to AI? I was speaking to a contact of mine who was quite senior in a certain nation's air force working in AI. And she made the point that China's never been battle tested. They've never been in a war before. Why is everyone so concerned that them having AI means that there can be no international cooperation on AI? Why does it have to be a competition? And so for a lot of people in that circle, something like Claude Mythos is really pointing to this catastrophic kind of situation where you have these autonomous cyber kinetic wars. It's just wars fought between different nations by AI against our critical infrastructure without enough checkpoints to ensure that more damage isn't done than necessary. I might leave you with that. I can't help thinking about AI from the perspective of these more existential questions, because at the end of the day, artificial intelligence is a technology, and it's a cool one, and it's an important one to secure. This is an AI security channel. But it's also something that really redefines our society. And so thinking about it both at the technical and the societal level, I think is really important and just really interesting. I think it's a great opportunity for people from all backgrounds to be able to contribute to the conversation. The final point I will end on when it comes to AI security is that there has been discussions that Mythos itself has been leaked, that other actors have somehow been able to get hold of Mythos. I don't know to what extent this has been validated. I've seen different reports about it, but I've not seen anything that seems very reliable. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, just by virtue of them announcing it means that there are going to be all sorts of people who now deeply desire access to it. And we know that there are many ways to steal a model from all the other things we've talked about on this AI security channel. So I think that's something that I'll end on. Mythos is an example both of using AI for security things, but also really considering the security of AI, not just of how we ensure that the model component within an AI system is secured, but what does it look like when people are after an entire AI system itself, and how realistically can we protect that when they don't necessarily need to steal a whole system, right? They can try and steal its weights, they can try and steal other sort of metadata about it. They could even disrupt it in some way. So I don't like to leave pessimistic, but yeah, I think there will definitely be evolutions in this conversation. So I'm sure there will be some sort of update from me in the future if I'm not traveling. So you never know, the next time I speak to you might be from Australia. I hope so. I hope I manage to find time to record. Because I have so many exciting things to announce. Yeah, but I'll leave that for future. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you next time. Please drop any comments below about this conversation. I think it's really, really interesting, and I want to hear everyone's opinions too, especially if you have other links. It's a great way for other people listening to find out about it. So, yep, I'll see you next time.